It's like, my goodness. There was a minister who was speaking to someone who was in prison. He was serving a term in prison, and he was like, gosh, what happened? He said, well, I'm basically at the end of Porn Boulevard. I mean, I am at the back end of it. And he said, this is what happened. I never thought I would go this way, but I found myself on a Yahoo chat room posing as a 12-year-old. This was an adult male. Posing as a 12-year-old, trying to solicit photos from other children. And I got caught, and now I'm serving how many ever years in jail. He said, when I started, I never thought I would get that far. Destruction. Well, what I want to do is I want to talk about the hook. And I want to talk about what to do about that hook and how that we can truly live in purity and live free. But before we do that, I want to just say a couple of general things about the topic of sex. And I want to illustrate it this way. And I'm going to try to communicate this in a way that is, I don't know if you've ever heard it said this way before or not, but I just don't think that there's enough people out there that are saying this. And I'm certainly not hearing it if it's out there. But something happened a few weeks ago. My family was at a restaurant. And we were sitting there, we were hanging out at the restaurant and eating, and there were these little advertisements that were on these little placards that were on the tables. And Christian, my 9-year-old, said to me, Daddy, there's a bad word on that card. And I go, really? And I looked over and I skimmed it, and at first I didn't see it, but then I realized what he was talking about. It was the word sex, S-E-X. And I go, oh, okay. And it was kind of an environment where we couldn't talk about it at the time, but I talked to him a little bit about it then, and then I asked him more questions later, and I said, hey, Christian, let's talk about what you saw on the thing. What was the bad word? And he goes, S-E-X. I go, really? That was the bad word? And I go, and Christian is 9 years old. He is right at that age, right in there where he's going to start learning a lot in the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm going to be ready for that for sure. Okay? And so I quizzed him. I said, well, tell me, what do you know about that? Because I was curious as to where he was at as a 9-year-old. And he said this. He goes, Daddy, my friend at school told me that was a bad word. I go, really? Well, what does that word mean? What do you think it means? He goes, and I could tell he was like, I don't know if I want to talk to Dad about this or not. You know? And he was kind of like, and one of the things we told our kids is we told them, we said, when you're at school and you hear words or hear things that you don't understand, you can always ask what they mean and you will not be in trouble. And I said, Christian, remember what I said is you will not be in trouble. And he goes, well, and then I said, what does it mean? He goes, well, it has to do with the way Luigi dances. And I was like, really? Well, how does Luigi dance? Show me. And he goes, you know, I could tell he was weird. He kind of starts doing this little church lady thing, you know? And I was like, okay. All right, so Christian is still pretty innocent with the topic, and I was very relieved. But here's the point right here, okay? Is Christian had already learned that the word sex equals bad. Okay? And maybe more so in church than anywhere else, is that we have wrongfully told people that sex is bad. That is actually absolutely not true. Sex is a wonderful and good thing. In fact, none of us would be here without it. That's for sure. It's wonderful. It's awesome. But here's the issue with sex. While it is a good thing and a God thing, it is easily perverted. And maybe more so than anything that we've got out there, that Satan knows that he can twist that one quicker and faster and more destructive than any other thing that we've got out there. And he can take it and he can make it something that is completely not. And because of that, we have a world that is absolutely confused about what it is. And even people that are wanting in good intentions, gosh, it's a bad thing. Okay? Now, let's go back to Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden. Okay, before the fall, before they ate the fruit, before they disobeyed God, here they are, things were perfect. Perfect world, perfect everything. God was there with them. They walked with God. They were completely naked, no need for clothes, and they had no shame. We cannot imagine what that would be like. But there was no shame. So then sin came. The devil tempted them, and then it brought on this what we would call tree of knowledge of good and evil, thinking to where they begin to have fear and shame, and all the things of sin begin to enter in. And that was one of the first things they did, is they covered themselves and they ran away and they hid. This has got to be bad. I feel shameful. And they did that. So Satan, from the very beginning, twisted that whole issue. And we're still dealing with that today. Now, a couple years ago, I worked at a place, and I was one of the few Christians that worked there. And there were several people that worked there. And there was one gentleman that worked there, and I probably shouldn't even use the term gentleman, but he was probably in his mid-50s or mid-40s, maybe 50, around that time. And he was very flamboyant and very outgoing. He and I were like night and day, completely different. Okay, I was a Christian, trying to do what's right. I try to respect people with the way that I talk and try to, uplift people. He was the exact opposite about that. He was anti-God. He was anti-Christ. He would say awful things about people. He would only do good things for people whenever he wanted to get his way. He was very manipulative, and he was very outgoing and very outspoken. And one of the things that he was just so outspoken about was his sexual exploits. He'd been married a few times. Not at the time he wasn't. But he would come in and very openly talk about what had happened the night before. And it was just a game to him, and it was just fun. And he began to realize that I was totally opposite of that. And I don't want to hear about him. I don't want to hear that stuff. And it bothers me because I'm trying to, I've got a path that I'm trying to go on. And it was hard. And he picked up on that, and he began to have fun by being even more like that around me. And I'm like, God, what do I do with this? I mean, I can only close him off, so much. And finally, I don't know if it was by the Spirit of God. It had to have been, but I figured out how to talk to him about this. And he came up to me, started telling all this stuff, and just being all crazy. And I go, buddy, I got something to tell you. You know how I believe about this, and I know where you're at. But I want to tell you something I think is true. I am having better sex than you are. He looked at me and it was like, whoa, wasn't expecting to hear that one. And then I began to do something that I think needs to be done so much more often, is I begin to give a vision of what sex is supposed to be like. And I said, here's why I believe that to my friend. I said, I'm having better sex than you because I have pledged myself to one person forever. And they have pledged themselves to me. Karen has pledged herself to me. And we have come before God who created us and created the issue. And we are going after him in a way to say we're going to do it within your bounds. We are not thinking about other people. We don't even look at other people. There's no fear that a third party will ever come into the equation, so that there's no comparing. There's no fear. There's no worry of loss, even looking. There's none of that there. We mark that out so that it is just her, me, fun. I guarantee I'm having better sex than you are. And I explain that to him. And then I'm going to say, well, with your situation is, you're just in it for the feeling. You're in it for the power. You're in it to be wherever you want to be and whoever you want to be with. And you don't care about that person. You don't care about their mind. You just care about what you see, what you experience. I mean, you're missing it completely. It's not. I feel sorry for you because you're missing out on something that's awesome. And you know what he told me? He goes, you know what? I think you're right about that. He got it. That is what the deal is all about right there. And unfortunately, Satan has taken it and twisted it and made a hook to make it something that's not. Well, let's talk about that hook real quick. And you can follow along your notes and put these in here. What is it that happens? And this, I believe this scenario has really happened with everybody in here at some point in your life. It starts out when you're very young. But here's the first thing, the hook, the perversion, the twist. Number one is at a young age, you're exposed to sexual impurity. Okay?